Welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection between humans and technology. My name is Guthrie. I'm here with Susan. Hey, Susan.
Hello, Guthrie.
How you doing?
I'm doing good today.
Well, that's fantastic. We are continuing our series on lecture-y things. I know there was a little consternation about what exactly this one was going to be on.
Yeah, but I picked one.
Okay. Well, do you want to
Oh,
introduce it
you want to know what it's going to be about?
or not?
I wanted to go. I wanted to go back in time. No, I wanted to go back and just really cover the basics of UX and design research. I mean, I think, I talk about it a lot and people talk about it a lot. And then sometimes I realize when people are talking that I don't know if we're talking about the same thing. So I just want to give kind of like my definition about what it is and why do it and just the real basics to keep in mind when you're doing design research. So that's what I wanted to do today. Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So I have a list of things I want to talk about, and I probably should have put this list in a better order, but I'm just going to go for it and just talk about some of the things on the list. So the first question, Guthrie, is if someone says, "Oh yeah, we should do or we do design research or we do UX user experience research," look, what does that even mean? And what is it and what is it not? And this is going to be the world of design research, according to Susan Weinstein, because not everybody may agree with this, but it's just, what I think it is. So I think it's easiest to talk about what it is not first and then to talk about what it is. So I make a distinction between design research and other kinds of research. So design research is not marketing research. So, marketing research, I think, I'm not an expert in marketing research, but marketing research has to do with researching people and the best way to get your information out to people and who your personas are that you're going to be buying or investigating whether to buy your product and so on. And UX and design research is not that because UX and design research is all about what do we need to know in order to make sure that the product that we are designing is designed well and designed right. So it's not necessarily, about who's going to be buying it and so on. It's about the users of the product. And the users of the product are not necessarily the same people as the buyers of the product. And this is especially true when you're talking about B2B. So design research is not marketing research. Design research is also not, uh, if you think about R&D research, what does R&D stand for, Guthrie? Isn't it research and design, which is kind of
No,
what's
no, it's
R&D stand for?
research and development.
Thank you. Really? Anyway, design research is not
I'll look it up.
R&D research. It's not like basic research about. Again, it's not. I don't think it's about just, any kind of basic research. It's not academic research. It is really specific to what do we need to do and know in order to be sure that the thing we have designed is gonna work.
It is, in fact, research and development, allegedly known in Europe as research and technological development.
That's so weird that I thought R&D meant research and design.
I don't know that's one of the ones where I know there's a lot of like acronyms in the business world.
Right,
I think
everybody
that's
just
one of the ones
says,
that everyone knows what that means.
"Really? You mean I'm
Why
the
would it be
only one in the
design?
I got 'cause D stands for design."
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
No. I think everyone knows that it's research and
This is
development.
one of those things that bothers me. There's so many things in my life that like I went around for decades thinking that the phrase if you heard the phrase for all intents and purposes,
But that's one that like is ancient and doesn't make any sense.
but I always thought it meant for all I thought it was for all intensive
All
purposes.
intensive purposes.
I went
At least like intense does not really make any sense.
decades, decades
I mean,
thinking
research and
that's what it was.
design does make sense, but if you think about it, when you're done with R&D, then you have to go make the product. So if R&D included the research about it and the design of
I
the
don't
product,
know.
then you wouldn't have anything to do.
Well, that doesn't make any sense because development. Anyway, all right, let's
Developing the
forget that.
technology, I guess.
All right. All right. So, if we talk about what design research is, then I think a good way to talk about it is to split it up into two things. It includes qualitative research and it includes evaluative research. So let's start with evaluative because that's the easiest. So I have designed something, Guthrie. I have an app, I have software, or maybe I have a physical product. I've designed something. I'm interested in whether or not I've done a good job designing it in terms of the user experience. Is someone going to be able to use this in the way that I was hoping they would be able to use it? And so I'm going to create a research study to evaluate the effectiveness of the user experience. That would be evaluative research. And that's a really critical, important part of UX research or design research, whichever term you like to use. So I'm going to take the product, the software, the app, the phone, the remote control, whatever it is, the vacuum robot, and I'm going to put it in front of actual people who are supposed to be the users, and I'm going to ask them to do a series of tasks. Can you program the vacuum robot to vacuum your living room? Can you do it in the way I've designed it? Does it make sense? Is it easy to do? Is it hard to do? How is the user experience? So that's a real basic part of design research and UX research. That's evaluative research. But that's not the only kind of research that you might do if you're doing design research or UX research. There's also what's typically been called generative research, qualitative/generative research. I don't know where that term comes from, but generative research is research I'm going to do before I design this thing. So it's not evaluative research because I haven't designed it yet. Before I design it, I need to do some research. Maybe I need to understand who are the users. Maybe I need to understand what's their mental model about using this product. Maybe I need to understand uh, what is the best task flow or workflow to design into the interface of this product, and in order to best match that mental model. That would all be considered generative research. So I'm going to do this research to generate the information I need in order to make sure that I design the right thing in the right way. So I think of design research as being either one of those two things. And those are pretty broad categories, but it's either evaluative research or it's generative research before I have done design. All right, I'm going to pause there, Guthrie, and see if you have any questions.
So, where do you feel, I mean, I don't, maybe this is too far ahead. Uh are there any kind of pitfalls that sort of divide the, because you were talking about exactly where this falls in the in like a business sense? Are there things people should watch out for from an organizational standpoint?
Yeah,
Or
a million.
or is this not the time?
No, I can touch on some of that. Yeah. Um,
A million.
there's so many. I just think, I think there, some of the pitfalls are that because there's not necessarily a lot of understanding about UX slash design research, then there's often not understanding of why you need it. It's like, oh, well, we are already doing research, and they're thinking about R&D, they're thinking about marketing research, but nobody's doing this kind of UX slash design research. I mean, it just is slipping through cracks. So I think that's a pitfall, is that people don't understand why you need it, or they don't understand how it's different. Um, I think another pitfall is that, so it's interesting, even though I think it's different from other kinds of research, it needs to be, there needs to be communication between whoever's doing this design research and whoever's doing the other research, because I can't tell you how many times we find out that, we're planning this research study, but then there's another group over there that's doing something. It's not the same, but it's kind of similar, and we're not in conversation with each other. So I think that's a pitfall. I think there really should be a network of about the different research in an organization, and this happens especially when you have a large organization. Another pitfall, I think, Guthrie, is something that maybe we can talk about in the future, which is how do you begin to store all this information? Because what happens a lot of times is there's a lot of research that happens, and then people forget about it, or somebody leaves the company, or
Yeah,
and there's not a repository, and then you end up redoing some research that you've already done, or
right,
not making use of research that was done.
right.
So yeah, there's a lot of pitfalls. I'll be talking about some of them today and in our next session on this too.
Okay. Well, then you sort of were laying things out. I'll let you continue to lay
All
things out.
right, all right. So another question that comes up is, when do you do this research? Like I meant, if it's evaluative, if we're evaluating the user experience of the product that we designed, so does that imply that we do it when we're all done with design? And the answer is no, not really. You want to be doing it. I mean, you can do design research anywhere along the spectrum. If you're doing generative research, you're doing that early to understand, as I said, people's mental models and their workflow. If you're doing it late, if you're doing it a little bit later, you're doing evaluative research because you're evaluating the design. Hopefully, you're evaluating a prototype because you evaluated it. You did research before you shipped the thing. So really, you know, the idea is to uh, uh, do continuous research and to figure out. So this is where the idea of strategy comes in, to figure out what is your research strategy. So we have this product and we're going to design it. Let's plan what kind of research we need based on what we know and what we don't know, and what's the critical points at which we're going to do research. So it's not, so a term that's used a lot these days is continuous discovery, which I kind of don't like that term, but whatever, it's very popular. But the idea is that we're going to decide what are the critical places where we should do some research. So don't think that research is only at the beginning or only at the end. It's whenever you think are the critical places, and you have to decide, right? You might not have a whole big research team, you might not have unlimited budget, you might not have unlimited access to users. So you have to put together a strategy. When should we do research? What kind of research should we do? What's critical for this project? So that brings us to another topic, which is, what does critical mean? And I think a really good way to think about this kind of research is, um, it's all about getting rid of risk. It's all about getting rid of risk. So if I'm going to develop a product and then I don't do research, and then the product fails, or there's lots of complaints, or we have to go back and redo it because we had some assumptions that turned out were not correct. What is the risk of that? What is the cost of that? And that'll tell you what to do research on and how much research to do. I mean, if it doesn't matter, if you have very low risk, it's like, it doesn't matter, just put something out there and then we'll change it, you know? It, we're agile. We'll just iterate. Well, if there's no risk to that, great, do it. You can tell I'm being facetious because I don't think that'll work. Because there's always some risk, or there usually is some risk. And sometimes there's a lot of risk. It's like, what if we get this wrong? What if that's not what the users want? What if that's not who the users are? What if the design, the conceptual design we put together really doesn't mesh with the user's mental model? Because we don't know what the user's mental model is. How big of a risk is this? How much money are we wasting? How much time are we wasting? And what's the risk of that? We'll have to go back and redo the whole thing. So it's all about mitigating risk. And that's why I think it's really valuable. And I find when I'm talking to business stakeholders, that's how to get them engaged. It is, what's the risk? So, which leads us to the next big topic in here, which is, it's all about assumptions. So, in my experience working with companies and organizations of various sizes in various different industries, everybody is making assumptions about their users, their products, and Guthrie, this kind of, I'm sure, gets into some kind of behavioral economics, cognitive bias thing, right? Because we're all walking around making assumptions about the work that we do, and we don't even realize that some of these things that are assumptions we think are truths. And again, back to mitigating risk. How risky is it? If something you believe is true about your users or your product is actually not true, how scary is that? Is that a problem or not a problem? So when I'm working with stakeholders, I always say, what are the things that you're assuming are true about the users and about their use of this product? And how confident are you about those assumptions? And what are the assumptions that you're not confident about, or you're not sure about at all? So one of the I was really impressed years and years ago. I know, Guthrie, I've probably talked to you about this. um, I think this was before you joined the company. uh, Zappos. Do you know Zappos?
Yes.
So Zappos sells shoes and clothing. They started with shoes. And when I first worked with them, they had just been bought by Amazon. Are they still owned by Amazon? I think they
I
are.
I believe so, but I don't know. It's been a number of years since I've looked up the whole thing.
So um they wanted to do some research, and they wanted to do research specifically about their assumptions. So they had this set of assumptions that were, some of which were really strongly related to their brand. And so they had assumptions about what did people, really think was critical about um, their shopping experience with Zappos, and they were interested specifically or especially in people who were already customers. And they had a whole bunch of, assumptions that they were basing their work on. For example, the fact that uh, really fast shipping, like overnight shipping, was critical. Like that was, people really wanted that. And just, all kinds of things about the shopping experience. And they wanted to test the assumptions. And I was pretty impressed that they wanted to test what I actually called their, I don't know where this phrase comes from, but their sacred cow assumption, the assumptions that they were so integral to who they were, but they wanted to test them. They were like, what are we missing here? Are we missing anything? Are these assumptions still true? And they also wanted to compare it geographically, and they wanted to compare it in terms of the
Okay. All right. Yes.
what. You don't want me to get into all the
No,
details.
no,
It
you
was
you
fun,
can. You can. You can.
but what?
No, just you don't have to go through the entire
Okay.
the entire
Anyway,
study you
it
talked
was
you talked
very.
about.
I was really impressed with
Yeah.
them wanting to test
Yeah.
their assumptions. So we did.
Fantastic.
Some of their assumptions were right, some were wrong.
No, but that's not that's something that's very rare. I don't think we've I don't think we've really run into much of that since then.
I know. So why not?
Is this your point?
That is my point. It's valuable. Test your
But
assumptions.
I have a suspicion as to why.
Okay.
Uh it's the so I used to work in risk mitigation
Yeah.
before I did UX stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just not something that is clearly understood. It's hard. So I'll give an example. I was working for a energy company who
Mhm.
was doing offshore exploration,
Mhm.
and the federal laws are that you have to um, have a escape boat for each person that's on this. If you're in like the Gulf of Mexico, if you're on like a platform doing exploration
Whatever.
for
Yeah.
oil and gas, you just every person has to have a seat on a escape boat in case
Okay,
something
not their
happens.
own boat, but they have to have a
No, they have
seat.
to have a seat.
You have to have enough
Um,
seats for everybody.
right, exactly. So
Okay.
at any time, everyone on the platform can get in a boat and just sail off to
Okay.
shore safely.
Yeah.
And this is like a real boat. This isn't like a emergency, airplane in the ocean kind of raft. I mean, this is like a real. It's a.
Oh, an actual, not just a rat, not
It's
just
not
a
just a raft.
flotation device.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's a small little boat that has a
Okay.
motor and you can just
Okay.
sail
Okay.
away because you're in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
It's not like you're in the middle of the Pacific.
Yeah.
Um, so the uh the the boat hangs over the side with ropes and chains,
Okay.
and one of the factors that the risk mitigation team did was analyzing the suppliers of who made the little ropes and chains to make sure that they were using the correct type of metal.
Oh goodness.
Yeah, exactly. Oh goodness, what a waste of time. And
I
so,
didn't say it was a waste of time. It's just like, I'm really glad that's not my job.
well, it's not that hard to do. You just have to make sure. So they did all the specs. And so if they had come back and said, well, everything looks fine. It is a huge amount of wasted time and effort. Not a huge amount. It's a small amount of wasted time and effort. If they come back and they say, "Oh, one of our suppliers was using the wrong kind of metal in the hooks,
Yeah,
then in the chain that was holding the boat up."
yeah,
Okay, well, then people go, "Well, glad you caught that." Like, what value did that add to the company? So, the only reason, by the way, that we were actually looking into this is because before I was there, a couple months before, there had been an incident in which the wrong hooks and chains had been
mm,
used
mm,
that were not corrosion resistant, and this was in the ocean.
mm,
And so they, over time, they corroded, they
mhm,
cracked,
mm,
and the boat, one of the boats, fell and smashed into the ocean and sunk. And because of that,
mhm.
all work had to stop
Ooh,
for
ouch,
weeks
okay.
and weeks and weeks because they
I
had to helicopter everyone out, and
Oh
then
my
they had
goodness.
to
So
like
that
get a
was
new boat, and they had to
very
buy a boat, and they
expensive.
didn't have a boat, and they had to redo the chains on the whole thing, and it
Yeah,
was weeks of delay,
yeah,
which in this sort of industry is like millions and
very
millions and millions
expensive,
of dollars.
right.
So it's like one of those things where how do you like, obviously if the bad thing happens, that
Yes,
everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, risk
yes,
mitigation," right? I see it, right? Obviously, there was
I
the oil
know.
spill in the Gulf. Well, if you could have avoided that, you would have saved a bajillion dollars. But if it's something where, in this, for like a Zappos case, they're doing risk mitigation, what if our primary assumptions about everything we do is wrong?
Right.
So if we do this, there's a value in mitigating that risk, even if it's small. Even if we think there's only a 1% chance that
Yes,
our entire, maybe let's move away from the Zappos product. There's a 1% chance that our entire software strategy is not going to
is
be
wrong.
compatible.
Right.
So we should do some research and figure out, if that's true. Even
Mhm,
if there's a 1% chance of that happening, you can do a probability calculation and figure out the actual value to the company.
mhm,
The
mhm.
problem is that 99 times out of 100, there's nothing wrong. And now you've just wasted what looks to be time and money doing this research that doesn't get anywhere. So in the Zappos thing, okay, we want to research our primary assumptions. And if they turn out that, oh yeah, our primary assumptions were correct, everyone says, yeah, we know they were correct. Why did you do this research? So it's always like companies don't do it because most of the time it doesn't. You don't find anything terrible,
Except
and then so there's no, so people don't see the value. People
I
don't see the value,
right.
and that's not how you get promoted.
I
I
know.
researched 10 things and confirmed that we were doing things correctly is not going to get you the promotion that you've been looking for. So this is the problem.
Yeah, I absolutely understand what you're saying, although I mean, maybe I'm totally biased. Although I've never done research where everything turned out it was perfectly fine. Now
Well, I
maybe
know you can find improvement, but it's not like, oh my god,
I
this
don't
is.
know. I would say most of the projects but see, I'm probably brought in on projects where people suspect there
You're
are
brought in when
serious
people
problems.
are, yeah, they're researching things they know they have problems with, and they
Yeah,
don't maybe
that's
don't know what
true.
the right answer is,
That's true.
which is very different than
Okay.
we're doing this
Okay.
research because there's no problems that we
But
see.
listen, I understand what you're saying, but here's the counter argument. Well, there are companies that I was just going to say nobody has too much research going on, but that's not true. I think it's so interesting with UX research, Guthrie. We've seen this huge explosion in UX research in the last couple of years, right? I mean, It's just enormous compared to where it was
I don't,
5,
is
10 years
that
ago.
true?
Yes.
Automated automated research.
No, 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 no. Look,
You think people are doing more?
I
Well, there's more like marketing research being done.
no, there's more. Look, the the role of a UX researcher, that was not even a specific role 15 years ago or even 10
Oh,
years
15
ago.
years ago. Okay, sure, sure.
It
Yes,
wasn't.
compared to 10
There was
years
a
ago, sure.
UX designer, and the UX designer maybe did a little bit of research. But the fact that you would go online and search for jobs and there'd be a job called UX researcher, I mean, that wasn't a thing. So it became very popular, or fairly popular, fairly recently. But I'm just here's my point. In most organizations, there aren't enough UX researchers. There aren't that many of them. So there it's easy to figure out which things should be researched, and it's not being done for regulatory reasons most of the time. Some of it is, but most of the time it's not. You can figure out which things should be tested. Now, uh, there are some exceptions to that. I mean, I've been involved in testing medical devices and the FDA requires that you test medical devices, and they requires that you test them to a level of statistical significance, which
Yeah.
means like mm, doing running 240 users through how the defibrillator works.
But this is but I don't think that's what we're talking about.
No,
That's a whole those are specialty industries
those
that
are
do
specialty
exist.
industries. Well, I'm talking about those too, but yeah, but I just think I understand what you're saying though. Unfortunate. It's to me, it's unfortunate, but absolutely true that in general there isn't a lot of interest in designing something to make sure that it's usable and has a good UX experience, unless there has been a disaster. I mean, you know, that's when companies get interested in it. There was the phone call I got from an insurance company that um, because their form that the real estate so it was an insurance company that owned a lot of real estate and bought and sold a lot of real estate. I don't know if you realize insurance companies, they sometimes make a lot of money. They have to do something with that money, and sometimes what they do is they invest in commercial real estate. So this was an insurance company. They had a form that the appraisers would fill out that would appraise the value of the real estate. And the form was really hard to use and nobody cared until an appraiser used it incorrectly because they couldn't figure out how to use the form. And the appraisal for the commercial real estate was off by $7 million. And it sold really fast at that lower price. And they lost $7 million. And then they called saying, we need to fix the form. That's when people care, when something has gone wrong. So I don't know, is that worth somebody doing a quick evaluation
Yeah,
of that
look, it's
form?
of course it's worth it, and I can you
I
can do
didn't
the
charge
math.
$7 million to fix the form,
Yeah. No, exactly. There's
but
there is obvious math that shows that it's worth it, but it's not sexy and it's not going to be you're not going to get applauded
it is
in an
sexy.
organization for it.
Save $7 million.
No, 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 no. But see, you don't. That's the thing. You don't know that you're going to save it. Most of the
Yeah,
time, you're not. So this is the. You wouldn't. No one would think. No one thinks the bad thing is going to happen.
that's true.
That's
Now
that's that's what it
isn't
is.
that a cognitive bias too?
Sure. Yeah. That the bad thing that's unlikely to happen is actually going to happen. People say, yeah, yeah, I guess there's a chance, but so if you make it less likely, people just don't care.
What do we do about this, Guthrie?
Uh, change our line of business.
No, that's not what I meant. How do you convince people otherwise?
Oh, I don't think you do.
You don't? You just got to wait until there's a disaster? But there's a lot of companies that have UX research and design
But
research
but when they're doing
programs.
UX research, I mean, we're talking about different stuff here. Most of the time when they're doing research, it's not about risk mitigation. Um, it's about uh, growth potential. So we want to
But that is
scale
but that's risk
our product to.
mitigation.
No, I don't think I
Because what's the
disagree.
risk if we don't scale?
Nah, that's not how
No.
they're looking at it. They're being
Mm.
like, okay, so we're at 5% market share. What's holding us back from 10% market share? So if we
But I don't
understand our target audience better, then
mm,
when if our product is better, then we can get to 10% market share and make money. So it's all about the
maybe.
positive. I don't
Maybe.
think anyone's doing it for pure risk
Really?
mitigation.
So you're
Yeah.
saying my entire argument that design
No,
research is
I'm
all
saying
about
you're
risk
right. Everyone else is
mitigation
doing
is
it wrong. I
but
agree with you.
but I thought that the risk mitigation argument would be powerful with stakeholders, and you're saying, "Nah."
No. You can't
Oh.
get promoted on that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm an outside consultant. I
Hey,
don't need to
we
get
had we
promoted.
had 0% growth this year because we mitigated the risk of being negative 2% growth. 0% growth. It's not,
We're
you're
not
not getting
no
promoted.
one's gonna get excited about it.
No, so yeah, it has to be, or the number has to go
So,
up. There has to
okay.
be a number and it has to go up.
So
It's the only thing companies will understand. I'm sorry
so
if I made this. You
yeah,
you
you've
you asked
really
for
you're
my thoughts,
why
and
did
now
I
you
ask
are
you for
feel.
your thoughts?
I don't know. You should have just kept going. I remember now. You were talking. You were giving a sort of a Zappos thing, and you were breaking down the entire.
I was okay, okay.
And I had to
So when
had
you're
to jump in.
working with what should you say when you're working with your stakeholders? Like nothing? Like just don't try and
Well, what's the goal? If the goal is just to do more research, then just focus on the positive gains, the gain in orientation. If we
interesting.
understand if our customers and our CPS, their
Okay.
NPS net promoter score will go up one
Okay.
point, and that'll lead to 4% more
Wow.
conversions.
Okay.
It's all just A/B
Okay.
testing, big data, conversion, NPS stuff. Like
Unless
I think
yeah. Okay.
my last thought before I let you get back to it.
Yeah.
I think the reason that research has exploded is
Yeah.
because it has been um, stitched into some of the other big data initiatives that happened at companies. And so there's companies that are doing a lot more analytical stuff, a lot more big data, a lot more research, just
Okay.
sort of period.
Yeah.
And they have whole data analytic departments, and they have blah blah
Yeah.
blah. And there's some stuff that is hard to quantify, and so it's just so you kind of need research to kind of get through those hurdles, and they've managed to tie the research to the big data
Well,
analytic stuff
also
like NPS.
sometimes you need the why. Like the data analytics tell you this is XYZ is happening, but you don't know why. So sometimes you need it for that
Yep.
purpose as well.
Yes. So yeah,
Hmm,
so I mean, for all so that is why that's what I think is really happening.
that's interesting. Hmm. Well, scratch my ideas.
No, no, say your ideas. I still think you're right. You should advocate for your ideas, even if I don't.
Even if you don't know, even though you don't think they're gonna work.
Well, I don't think that's. I'm just a cynic about business motivations. But hey, look, people who are listening to this podcast, they're the smart ones out there. So you should present your ideas unadulterated, and then they can be on the cutting
and
edge.
f- and and then they won't work.
I am sorry for derailing you.
No, that's all right. It's good because it actually I'm gonna twist it and make it feed into the next topic,
Okay.
which is working with your stakeholder. Because I think it's really critical. I guess being a practical person and being a person who is usually an outside consultant, I am almost never. It's been a couple times, but most of the time I'm not sitting around thinking up the research I would like to do. I have somebody who wants me to do research on a particular topic. I have a stakeholder. And so I think it's very important to know at all times who is your stakeholder, who this particular piece of research, who cares about it, why do they care about it, what's important to them about it. And what I find, especially in research, is that the stakeholders often have not articulated what they're trying to find out. It's not clear. Like somebody's just decided to do research about something, but they don't they haven't communicated that clearly to you, or why now, or what it is they want to know. And I think it's a mistake to just go into doing research without trying to get some of that articulated. So I think it's really important that you know who your stakeholder is, that you work with them to try and get that figured out ahead of time, because you have to design a research. You have to figure out, are we doing qualitative? Are we doing generative? Are we doing quantitative? Are we doing evaluative? What are we doing? And with whom? And how much? And how long? And you can't make those decisions if you don't have a research strategy. So you got to help. And I find you got to help your stakeholders articulate that. Rarely does anyone come to me and say, this is exactly what we want to know, and this is how we'd like you to do it, and that those ideas are clear and a good idea. So that I think ties into what you said, Guthrie, because is it are they do they have these risk mitigation assumptions? Did something bad happen and they're trying to figure out why? Or like you said, nah, nobody's thinking that way. They're thinking about growth, they're thinking about opportunity, and being able to talk about it, about the research you want to do, and match that up with what it is they want to know is critical. And I find you have to like pull that out of them. I mean, I've had clients who, oh, we really want to do research on this, but it's still not clear. Even when they think they're clear, they're not clear. And so you have to, you have to push them. What is it you really want to know? Why do you want to know that? What what kinds of information do you want to have coming out of this research? What kinds of decisions do you want to be able to make coming out of this research? Because then you have to figure out whether that's even realistic. And sometimes it's just there's so much stuff they want, you've got to prioritize it. I'm a thing I say a lot when I'm working with a stakeholder is, let's we're going to have a meeting. Come to me with all the things you want to learn, and then we're going to prioritize them. And that's really useful conversation to have. Um, so know who your stakeholder is, find out what it is they want to know from the research, and then force them to prioritize that. Because often you can't do it all, at least not in one research study. All right.
Okay.
Let's see. I'm looking at my list here. So let's talk next about research plans versus research protocols. Because I guess there's three deliverables that I think are critical to come up with during research. One is the plan, one is the protocol, one is the report of findings. So let's see. Let's go backwards. How's that? Let's go to the end and work our way back. So the coming out of any research you do, you want to summarize your findings and give that to your stakeholders. And um, usually, often, at least often, maybe not usually, I have to have different versions of that. Like I have to have the detailed version for the one stakeholder I've been working with a lot, but then I need a less detailed version that goes to maybe higher up execs and so on. And uh, I have pretty strong opinions that that report of findings should be given in in a conversation, not just a written report that gets handed over. I've seen a lot of really great research not get used and not get read because it was a written report and very few people will read a written report. So I think it's really important to do it as a presentation. You can also do a report with it. You can have a detailed written report, but I think you need to have a presentation that you can talk through. And Guthrie, you know from firsthand experience with me that it's really easy to underestimate how much time it takes to put those reports together. I think there have been many.
You especially do not like putting them together.
I don't like putting. Yes, I do.
You like coming up with them, but there was like someone, if you had like an admin assistant
Yeah,
who
or if
could
I had
actually do the
you
putting, yeah,
who would
yeah,
actually create the
yeah,
report.
exactly. Now I don't mind, putting that kind of stuff together. That's fine for me. But some people are better at creating a story and putting the detail, the right amount of detail.
You don't think I'm one of those?
Oh, I didn't say you're not good at it. I just said you didn't like it.
Oh, you're being very nice and
You would much rather just go up there and talk.
yeah, I get. Well, like I'll put together. We'll do some planning for like how long a project is going to take, and I know from having done this so many times, I know how long it's going to take to put that research report and presentation together. And I can't make myself write that many hours in the spreadsheet planning it because it seems impossible that it would take that much time. And I know as I'm estimating it that I'm even underestimating it. It can take more time to do the research report than it did to do the research. It's amazing how much time it can take to put together a good report.
Well, that's true of a lot of admin tasks.
It just
Like it's like the research too, right? You have like a couple hours talking to people, and then it's hours and hours of parsing data and writing the questions and getting the
I used to
insights and
give
making the
I used to
reports.
give people 2 options. I don't know that I haven't done this lately. Option 1 was, we get on the phone and I tell you what I found out with no report. And option number 2 was with a report that, you'd
Oh,
have afterwards. And because the price was like half as much if you didn't need the
it's no,
report.
we've sort of run in the middle, I think.
I know I used to do that though. I think that was before you were with the company. everyone wanted a report, but they didn't want to pay for it. So I ran into trouble with that strategy because it was like, well, I want the report, but why does it cost so much? I don't think they believed me. Anyway, you need a good report. You need to present the report. You may need multiple levels of the report. Okay, so that's the findings report. Before that, two other documents I think you have to have. The next one, backing up, going in opposite direction of the timeline, is the research protocol. So the research protocol is the way I use that term is it's the detail of what the researcher is going to do and say. So, for instance, if you're doing an evaluative user test where you're having people do tasks and you're observing them, it's literally the list of tasks. It's like, okay, here's the scenario, here's the task that you're going to give the user, here's the instructions you give the user for each task, and so on. So it is literally the form that the researcher follows during the research. Or if you're doing an interview with users, it's the interview questions. Um, that's what the protocol is. So it's exactly what the researcher follows during the research. And I find that there's sometimes confusion between the protocol and then the third deliverable that I'm going to mention, which comes sequentially before the protocol, which is the research plan. So I make a distinction between the research plan and the protocol because the plan is not the step by step of what the researcher does and says during the research. The plan the is your description of why you're doing this research, when you're doing it, who you're researching, what an overview of the methodology you're going to use. So it's a higher level than the protocol. And it's important because you want to make sure you get buy-in from your stakeholders about what you're planning to do before you go create the protocol and actually do it. Um, this is always true, but here's why I think it's important. I've seen many situations where people say they want to go find out about whatever the research is about. And then when you conduct the research and bring the results to them, they don't like the results. They don't like the answers you have. They don't like what you found out. And they want to argue with you about it. And so the best way they have to argue about it is to argue with your methodology. Why did you talk to those people? Why did you ask them those questions? Why did why didn't you talk to these other people? Why didn't you do this? So, the best way to stop that from happening is to get their agreement and approval on the plan and to get their agreement and approval on the protocol. They still might not like the result, but it stops them from objecting based on what you did because they saw what you did and they said that was a good plan. And so then they can have all kinds of arguments about what to do about your findings if they don't like them. But I really, I cannot tell you, Guthrie, how many times if I didn't or if the team didn't get buy-in on the plan ahead of time. And the most common one is, oh, why did you interview those people? Or why did you do the user test on those people? Yeah, if you'd done it on these other people over here, you would have gotten totally different findings. So that's why I think a plan, but besides which, it's just really useful to write down, look, here's what we're going to do. Here's the questions we're trying to answer. Here's the way we're going to go about doing it. Here are the people we're planning on talking to. Here's the time frame for it. And we're going to do we're going to do one-on-one interviews, or we're going to do an interview combined with having them do some tests with the prototype and so on. So that's your plan. Then you get approval from your stakeholders on that. Then you create your protocol, get approval from your stakeholders on that. It'll put you in a much better position when you get to the other side of it. So, Guthrie, so that's kind of my, I don't know, my summary about critical ideas and issues in doing UX research, design research. Do you feel, Guthrie, that there's anything I have left out in terms of what's critical, or just questions you have about research?
I there's not no, but I also know a lot about it, so I can't think. Nothing is coming to mind for me.
Okay. Well, we had talked about the fact that we're doing a series, right?
Yeah.
So in this was the kind of the introduction to UX and design research. So then, what we're going to do in our next session on this topic is we'll do a deep dive into some of these. I've talked about a lot of stuff, so we may not be able to do a deep dive in everything, but we'll do a deeper dive into some of these issues, and that's what we're going to do in our next one. And if anyone has questions or comments, we always invite those. And Guthrie, what's the best way to reach us if someone has a question or a comment?
Email us at info@theteamw.com.
Great.
One of these days, maybe we'll have to. I've always disliked Twitter.
Always, or just since the
No,
last
always.
year?
I had a burner Twitter account just sitting around, but I since 2017 I just have not used Twitter.
Okay. So what's your idea?
No, maybe we'll start up like a Blue Sky or something. If there's like a Twitter alternative that's not terrible for everyone.
You mean as a
As a way for like on a corporate level so that people can get in touch with us.
oh,
So
so what
that's
what is that going to be?
I don't know yet. Like I said, maybe it'll be a Blue Sky account once they figure that out. But it's not gonna be on Facebook and it's not gonna be on Twitter. So it's gotta be something.
Okay. In the meantime, use
Yeah,
email.
use email.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, Guthrie.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.